Specialist Orrin Vass had been told the assignment was simple. Stack the files, sit against the back wall, do not speak. He was 23 years old and had been a JAG paralegal for 11 months. And the colonel who briefed him that morning had used the word routine 3 times in 2 sentences, which Vass had already learned meant the opposite. The review board room on the 3rd floor of Fort Cauldron's administrative building held a long oak table, 6 chairs on one side for the panel, 1 chair on the other for the subject. The walls were the color of old paper. A single window looked out onto the parade ground, where the morning flag had already been raised, and the formation had already dispersed, and the day was going about its business, as though nothing of particular consequence was happening on the 3rd floor. Vass set the last manila folder at Colonel Harlan's place, straightened it twice, and moved to his chair against the back wall. He had the stack of duplicates in his lap, and a pen he didn't expect to use. The subject was already seated when he came in. She had been there before anyone else, which was the first thing that caught his attention. She was young, younger than he expected from the thickness of the file. 27, maybe. Dark hair pulled back, Army service uniform, pressed and correct, the collar buttoned to the throat. Her hands were flat on the table in front of her, not folded, not gripping anything. She had the look of someone waiting for a bus she had already decided she was getting on. The ribbon bar above her left breast pocket had a gap in it, a faint rectangle of slightly brighter fabric where something had been removed. Vass noticed it the way you notice a missing tooth in a familiar smile, not immediately, but once you see it, you cannot stop seeing it. Colonel Harlan entered at 5 past the hour with the rest of the panel. He was a large man, of large, that is partly size, and partly the accumulation of years of people stepping aside. He did not look at the subject when he sat down. He opened his folder, adjusted his reading glasses, and addressed the room with the efficiency of a man who had done this before, and expected to be done by lunch. This proceeding is convened to review the commendation ribbon awarded to First Lieutenant Adrian Call, 75th Ranger Regiment Support Attachment, following actions at Firebase Kestrel, and to determine whether the original commendation was consistent with documented role and standing orders. He paused and looked at her over the glasses. Lieutenant Call, this panel has reviewed 14 months of documentation. Purpose of this proceeding is not adversarial. We are asking you to acknowledge the record as presented and to allow this panel to close the matter cleanly. Do you understand? Vass watched her. She had not moved. She had not shifted in the chair, or straightened, or pressed her lips together, or done any of the small things people do when a room is aimed at them. She looked at Harlan the way you look at weather, noting it, not troubled by it. I understand what you're asking, she said. Her voice was even, practiced even, not the performed calm of someone holding something back, just even, the way a level is level. Harlan nodded, satisfied. Then let's proceed. Captain Ames will summarize the I won't be acknowledging the record as presented, she said. The room went quiet in the particular way. Rooms go quiet when something has departed from the script. Captain Ames, halfway to his feet, sat back down. One of the panel members, a major whose name Vass had already forgotten, looked up from his notes. Harlan took his glasses off. Tenant. The record as presented is incomplete, she said. It does not include the JSOC after action file for Firebase Kestrel. Reference number November 7 Whiskey 14. That file is sealed at a clearance level above this panel's access. I would suggest requesting it before this proceeding continues. She placed a single index card on the table and slid it to the center. She had written the reference number on it in ink, clear and square. She set it there the way you set down a chess piece. Not with force, not with theater. Just placed it and folded her hands again. Harlan looked at the card. He looked at her. He put his glasses back on and looked at the card again. Then he turned to his aide, a young warrant officer standing near the door, and said something in a low voice. The warrant officer left the room. Vass looked at his pen. He was not sure when he had picked it up. The next 11 minutes were the quietest he had ever spent in a room full of people. Harlan shuffled papers. Shh. The panel members looked at their documents with the focused attention of people who are not reading. The subject sat with her hands folded and looked at the window and at the flag on the parade ground. and she did not appear to find the waiting difficult. The door opened. Brigadier General Carla Weston walked in. She was retired. Vassus would learn later. And she had driven 40 minutes that morning from the town where she lived, because she had received a phone call 2 days ago from a lieutenant whose name she had not forgotten since Firebase Kestrel. She was in civilian clothes, a dark jacket, plain collar, but she carried herself the way the military never entirely leaves a person. Weight forward, eyes first. Under her arm was a manila envelope, thicker than anything on the table. She looked at Colonel Harlan with the mild, uncomplicated expression of a person who has outranked someone for so long it is simply a fact of the landscape. "Sit down, Colonel," she said, unkindly. "You're going to want to." She set the envelope on the table, broke the seal, and removed a single compact audio player and a printed document. She set the player at the center of the table and pressed play without preamble or explanation. The sound in the room changed. It was her voice, the subject's voice, Tennant's voice. But different from the voice that had answered Harlan. Harder, compressed the way voices get when they are working. Recording had the flat acoustic of a field radio, and beneath it, distant but present, the sound of a firebase under fire. November 374. Elevation adjusted, confirm copy. That is danger adjacent on the western approach. 2 vehicles, I say again. 2 vehicles. Harlan had gone very still. Bravo element confirm status. I have 4 personnel unaccounted on the northern perimeter. Requesting immediate. The major with the forgotten name had set his pen down. I have eyes on the approach. Range approximately 400. I am adjusting. Stand by. It ran for 3 hours and 41 minutes. Vass knew this because the display on the player showed the full duration, and he stared at those numbers. 341:8. While her voice worked through the recording with the patience and precision of someone who had been trained to think clearly in conditions designed to prevent it. Grid calls, status checks, corrections. At one point, a secondary explosion rolled through the audio, and her voice paused for exactly 2 seconds, and then resumed where it had left off. Same cadence, same level tone, as though she had simply turned a page. When the recording ended, the room was still. B.G. Weston picked up the printed document and set it face up on the table. It was a column of names, 22 of them. Vass could read them from where he sat. Plain type, last name, first rank, unit designation. Those are the personnel extracted from Firebase Kestrel, Weston said. Every one of them came out because of the targeting calls on that recording. The JSC field assessment is in the envelope. I was the officer who signed it. She looked at Harlan. The commendation ribbon was not a clerical error, Colonel. It was the minimum the regiment could do. Colonel Harlan was looking at the column of names. His hands were on the table, flat, in the same attitude the lieutenant had held at the start of the proceeding. He did not speak. The panel member on the far left, a Lieutenant Colonel Vass, had not heard say a word, pushed his chair back and stood. Not ceremonially, not with announcement, he simply stood. The major across from him stood a moment later, then the captain, then the others, one by one. The way people stand when standing is the only honest thing left to do. Harlan stood last. He did not look at her when he did it. B.G. Weston reached into the envelope and removed a commendation ribbon, the original, or one identical to it, and walked around the table, rose, and stood at attention. And the general pinned the ribbon back into the gap in the bar above her pocket with the matter-of-fact steadiness of someone who has done this before and means it every time. "Vantage," Weston said quietly. The lieutenant's call sign. The word was not a question and not an introduction. It was a recognition, the way you say a name you have not forgotten. The lieutenant said nothing. She did not smile or nod or look at Harlan. She looked straight ahead, the way she had looked at the window, level and still. Then set a second document on the table, an uncapped pen. She signed it in 2 places and pushed it toward the panel chair. It was a promotion order. The panel chair signed it without sitting back down. The proceeding was over. The panel filed out. B.G. Weston said something brief to the lieutenant. Vass could not hear it, and then followed them, leaving the envelope and the player on the table. Harlan was the last of them out. He paused once at the door, with his hand on the frame, and Vass thought for a moment he might say something. He did not. He went through, and the door closed behind him. Vass was alone with her. She was gathering her cap from the chair beside her, taking her time. Her back was to him. He became aware that he was standing. He had not noticed himself stand during the recording. He was standing, his duplicates stacked on the chair behind him, his pen in his hand. She turned toward the door and saw him. She stopped. He did not know what he intended to say. He was 23, and he had spent 3 hours and 41 minutes of his morning learning something he had not been prepared to learn, which was the particular kind of quiet it takes to hold a line with your voice when everything around you is coming apart. He came to attention. It was not a decision. It was the only thing that felt accurate. She looked at him for a moment, not surprised, not moved, just present. She gave him a single nod, the way you acknowledge something that needed no speech. Then she put on her cap, straight and even, and walked out. Vass stood there a moment longer. The room still had the recording in it somehow. Not the sound, but the weight of it. 3 hours and 41 minutes of one person holding the line. He picked up his duplicates. He straced the stack. He carried them out into the hallway, and he kept his back straight the whole way down.